Hello. Good morning. So if someone told you there's not normally traffic in Boston on a rainy, whatever day we are, that was a lie. So those who aren't here yet, no excuses, really. So it's great to see you all here. It seems like you have a great agenda. I want you to know that our BCG, the Boston office is about 2 blocks down the road. And we happen to be having our finance conference of senior finance folks in town also this week. And they're in this hotel. So in the bar tonight, look for them, because with the weather as it is, I think there'll be many people coming back to the bar. And if you see an international looking group chatting and hopefully controlling themselves, really reach out and catch up with some of them. You'll enjoy them, and they'll enjoy your stories as well. So what we're going to do today, I know enough from these sort of things that there's a correlation between how much you enjoy the speaking and how short it is before you get to the Q&A. So I promise I won't talk too long, but I thought it'd be helpful to share a little bit of my story and also BCG's growth story with you as a way to kind of get the juices flowing on going international. And then we'll go to Omar and we'll have a discussion and get as many questions as we can from you all in 50 minutes. So I've broken it into 3 chapters. Actually, one thing I have to find is the clicker. There you go. I've broken it into 3 chapters, the story. And so I'm going to start with the 90s, which is when I was actually a service provider at Coopers and Lybrand and PwC. And then move into when I came over to BCG and went to the inside to build the finance team, and then became CFO, and then the story continues. So, and actually, I'm actually 2 weeks out of being the CFO. I've now taken on the head of operations, where we're going to digitize the company as my next chapter. So that one's just unfolding. We won't talk about that too much today. I'll stick to the finance topics, but looking forward to that next chapter as well. So, starting first with my story, when I went to PwC, actually Coopers again, when I had an engineering degree and a business school, came right out of MBA and had no particular interest in finance, which is a little strange. But what I had an interest in was learning as much as I could, and I thought that was a great platform. So I really went to the professional services platform for the learning and for the great exposure. I was only 23, I hadn't worked, I had taught tennis, not much else interesting. And so that's what I set out to do, was try to learn as much as I could. But then within a couple years, the piece of the business, both inside Coopers, but then also my clients, that really intrigued me was the international piece. And so I started going very much to that set of clients, those high-tech companies in the Boston area or others that were trying to go international early. And the things that really I enjoyed and that built my platform were around figuring out how to get the network of Coopers and Lybrand and PwC folks around the world to work with the clients folks also around the world and build something. And so let me give you a little bit of BCG's story at that time and how we approached it from the PwC side. So when I started when we first got on the account, BCG was 200 million. You see that at the very beginning? And you can't really see it because it's so small, which tells you where we're going here. But today we're 7.5 billion. So we started at 200 million in 1990. And you can see also how many offices. First of all, we had 17 offices at that time and was already really going to be an international company. But the 90s was about expansion and expansion of the global footprint. And it was a key part of the strategy for BCG, was to expand globally, particularly into Asia, but also Latin America, Eastern Europe were the primaries at the time. And the 37 new offices, that's hard stuff. Not all of them are in new geographies, but going and figuring out how to do business in a new place requires a lot of tenaciousness. The key issues that we worked on were everything from the legal structure, how to get the taxes right. I was actually a tax partner at PwC, and then build the team. So the 18% revenue growth was not a purpose. It was really a result from building the team. It was really about building scale, building the platform, making sure that we were able to offer to our clients a global offer. And then what did we need? We needed from the partnership patience. It was really about, because you're going to spend some money when you're trying to grow sideways and grow in new places, and really making sure that the CEO is able to keep that vision on track for the partnership and try to perform at the same time, but mostly it was about growth. So then I took a different tactic. So in 2001, again, I loved BCG. It was my favorite client. International was sort of what I wanted to do. And BCG kind of gave me one of those now or never offers. And there had been a few before, but this was really, really the now or never offer, so they said. And was, will you come over and be a partner at BCG and build the finance team? Or I could stay and continue my career at Cooper's, which would have been great as well in PwC. I decided to take the risk and came over, and it became one of those whatever it takes sort of stories. We were a small company trying to grow big. By then we were up to 1.2 billion in 2001. And the areas that needed to be done that I took on and tried to learn about, besides tax and some of the areas I already knew, was treasury, accounting. I took on compensation, benefits, opening up pension plans around the world, working really closely with legal, and many of the things you do when you're planting new flags and trying to grow business and figure out how to do it with a reasonable profitability. So during that time, now BCG grew another, whatever that says, I can't see the slide, I should get organized here, grew another 12% over that period, or 16%, and opened 12 new offices. But part of the interesting thing there was you can see how the growth was flat for a few years. If you remember, some of you remember 01, 02 was a pretty wild time. There was a dot-com bubble out there, and a lot of folks were competing for talent. Then that burst. There was an Asian crisis. So that was probably the first time some of my finance new skills got tested in a big way, right? Currency, hugely challenging, and something where if you set your compensation programs and so forth up properly, get your hedging, you can manage through those. But you have people that are part of a global network watching their currency dive by 80% in times like that. And so there was a bit of a pause. And then what I would say, something that's turned out to be super important to BCG's place we are today, is our CEO then came out of that. We came out of that in around 02, and he said, we're growing back to growth, and put the pedal to the metal to build the firm when others were probably still a bit tentative after those couple of years that were tough. And so this going right back to growth and trying to build, but now it was a little bit more about, yes, we're going to open some new offices, but let's make sure we get the scaled up in the ones we have at the same time, and then change some of our priorities over to also building out our functional capabilities. Many still knew BCG as a strategy company. We were well past that, but let's make sure we build out the diversification of offers that we can bring to our clients. So by the end of 07, 08, we were up to 2.7 billion. And then one day, I was growing along, and the CFO actually had taken on head of functions, had taken on chief of staff role, and more was coming to me. But one day he decided to leave. And so 2 days later, I'm CFO. And be careful what you wish for. It was a course I hadn't gotten quite to the point where I was going to figure out what to do next. But then given that role, and having quite a lot of confidence in the managing part of the thing, you now are a seat at the table at the executive committee. You got to put your strategic hat on, think about growth, think about much more about how to build the team in the top line, and leave behind just the expert functions, and much more take on the strategic side of the business. And so what was I met with? If you remember, I'm sure you all remember 07, 08, 09. So 07, cheers, best year ever, growing, growing, growing. I think we had fireworks going off at our partner meeting in New York. It was a little embarrassing. And you could see that the bubble was coming to the end and that things were starting to turn. But yet, in general, folks were not absorbing that. So I was only a year into being CFO when all of a sudden Lehman Brothers, et cetera, and the crisis begins. that really was the next important test of how are you going to handle that. Now, fortunately, I had a great chief of staff, a very patient CEO, and a great executive committee. We worked through that together. I would say that some of the challenges then were really just holding on, cutting costs that didn't matter, making sure that our team held together, waiting to see, quite frankly, what would happen. There was a lot that was uncontrollable. And so one of probably the most proud things that we did was to hold flat for those next couple years and just not step backwards as far as building our team around the world and be able to then pick it up and again restart the growth engines in 9 and 10. I'll take you to one other chapter here. So over that next 12 years when I've been CFO, the last 5 have been another, I didn't create a 4th chapter, but the last 5 have been super interesting because BCG also decided along those lines that we, like everybody else, have to become a tech company. And what's that mean? Our offer to our clients needs to be more diverse. It needs to integrate digital. It needs to potentially use software in our offer. And we need to be #1 in digital transformation for our clients. And so it's been about building new capabilities beyond our traditional, not go to MBAs, put two or three on a great case, send out smart people and solve it. We needed engineers, we needed data scientists, we need a lot of more diverse skill sets, and then figuring out how to pull those diverse teams together. So the last 5 years, and one reason why you see the growth so high, is because we made bets on more talent in different places and how to bring that to the team. Now, of course, you create some challenges internationally because you can't build that everywhere. You've got to pick your spots and then figure out how to bring teams together that are much more cross-border to serve the client. So if you have 6 data scientists sitting in Germany, you need to figure out how are you going to get them to the Middle East or to Eastern Europe or to Russia in order to solve the issues, where before we might have had a more contained team being able to serve the clients in those locations. So the last 5 years, we also, more acquisitions, small ones, but still for BCG, very unusual. We build organically, but build acquisitions, bring in some new things, try some new things. And so it's been really gratifying. In 2018, we're now $7.5 billion. So again, it's a long journey since back when it was $200 million. But at 18, we grew 19%. And had a strong year for the firm. So I really am curious and hope to make a big impact on the next 5 to 10 years. I think the industry is going to change more and more. The whole technology coming in, how much is software, how much is services, how do you put that together to solve issues for your clients? And then internationally, how do you cope with what's actually, I would say, a little bit back to the 90s as far as nationalism, tough regulation, tax people you can't trust, laws you're not sure are going to change, all that sort of thing. So in some ways, we're trying to be more global than ever in an environment that's actually gotten much tougher to be global. And so those are the challenges going forward. Last part of my story I'll share is actually in 2016 is when I gave the CEO the 2-year notice. I said, 12 years is a lot, and I think 2 years, we have an election process. I said 2 more years, and then I'll come out of the CFO role. And so that was the plan, and we followed through on that. But in 2017, I actually got sick, so I had to go battle breast cancer. I came back from that and said, I'm not done, and said, I think I'll go take, the operations. They asked, do you want to do that? And I said, yep, I'll do that. We're going to see if we can digitize the operations over the next 3 to 5 years and on to my next chapter. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, thank you, and I hope we can get to some good discussions.